Hi, hello, and welcome to the channel. We talk horror here. If that's something you're into, please consider liking and subscribing. Right off the bat today, I want to say that I do this channel because I love horror movies. I hope I've been able to prove that with my prior videos, and this one shouldn't be an exception. I care about horror and the horror community, probably a lot more than I should, and I genuinely think that the horror genre is in a very healthy place right now. However, throughout my relatively short time of doing this, there are some things that I've thought about, and I would like to get them off of my chest. Some of which I'm about to say can definitely be applied to not just horror movies, but movie discourse overall online, although I feel like the horror space is maybe struggling a bit more with these issues because, as horror fans, we are very passionate about the things we love. But enough beating around the bush. Let's just get into it. I recently saw the first Omen, which I thought was alright. I like it a lot from a technical standpoint, but I always have a hard time enjoying prequels, especially in the horror genre. That's perhaps a topic for another video, because for today, I want to focus on the marketing of the film. The poster proudly proclaims that it is the most terrifying movie of the year. Notice how these words aren't in quotes on the poster, so it's not actually taken from an early review of the film. This is just something the marketing people thought would be a good thing to put on the poster. It felt oddly shameless to me for such a high-caliber film. Like, this is how low-budget straight-to-video horror from the 80s would market itself. And then I had this other thought that, no, actually, this marketing makes a lot of sense because this is how we talk about horror films. I mean, the marketing worked, as I initially thought the words on the poster were from a review of the film. There is an over-exaggeration to the words we use when talking about horror that often feels more like marketing than criticism or discussion. I use the word we because I know that I am also guilty of this at times. When you're passionate about a specific subject, it's hard not to become an ambassador for it. I mean, if you watched any of my other videos, think about how many times I'll watch a movie and says, yeah, this kind of sucks, but I enjoyed it, so maybe check it out. That's not me giving a pass to filmmakers for making a bad film. That's me loving horror so much that I can enjoy a bad movie. My point here is that I know how easy it is to get excited about this genre, but I do think we need to vary our vocabulary a little bit. Every great horror movie that comes out can't be the scariest movie since The Exorcist. Every disturbing film isn't going to be the one that breaks you and makes you wish you never saw it. I actually think we're doing the genre a disservice when we speak about it like this, because, as I said before, it feels like marketing. Remember when a bunch of people on TikTok were hyping up Skinamarink as the scariest movie ever made, without describing what the film actually was? That led to a bunch of people hating it because they felt like they were tricked into watching an experimental art house film. That person is me, by the way. I'm included in that group. I want to stop right here and acknowledge that there are a ton of people in the horror community who do wonderful critical analysis on YouTube, TikTok, or on podcasts. I think this is something we need to all think about, though, both from a creator standpoint, but perhaps most importantly, from the viewer standpoint. You deserve good and honest reviews that you can trust. This horror hype cycle isn't something creators just fall into. It can be a full-on career path. Extreme reactions get clicks, which benefits the creator since they get ad revenue from views on their videos, and then it also benefits the movie studios as it's basically just free marketing for their films. The lines between fans, critics, and filmmakers are also getting blurrier by the day, which creates another potential conflict of interest. Like, let's say you have a moderately successful YouTube channel. Would you really be inclined to give a bad review to a film if you know the people who worked on it? Or even just if the marketing people were extremely cool to you, inviting you to do press for the movie, maybe scoring you some interviews? I'll admit, I'm partly making this video to hold myself accountable in the future as well. Even though this is still a very small channel, I have to think about these things as independent filmmakers have found my reviews of their movies and reached out to me. It's flattering, but it's also really difficult to navigate, and if you think I ever mess up, please tell me. I also really don't want you to think that I'm making this video with specific creators in mind, because I'm really not. I'm simply talking about things that I've observed generally while being active on this channel. I pay a lot more attention to social media now than I ever did before, so I am noticing these things way more frequently. Before we move on from this, I have a specific moment that I want to share with you regarding how weird this space that I'm operating in can be. I had once someone be pretty rude to me at a film festival that I was working at, and 2 hours later I was sitting in a screening waiting for their movie to start. This was around the time when I had like 400 subscribers. No one was watching my videos, right? So I felt like at that time I had to review every movie I got the chance to see early, but to be honest, it was really hard for me to separate the art from the artist at that moment. I ended up giving the film a fairly middling review, which is something I still stand by the way, so that's good at least. But it was definitely a learning experience. I probably should have slept on it a little longer, or maybe just not reviewed the film at all, because I was really struggling to have an unbiased approach. And I'm deliberately not saying the name of this movie, because the person I had this interaction with was probably just tired from traveling all day, or just having a bad day. I don't want to entertain speculation regarding who this person was either, because they do not deserve any heat from this, but I will say that they were not a well-known figure in the community, and perhaps me not knowing who they were was actually why they were a little bit annoyed with me. But who can say? Let's move on. Here's something I've noticed. If the marketing for your movie is mainly centered around influencers and online personalities, it's probably going to be bad. I saw a lot of people on TikTok getting invited to see The Strangers Chapter 1 early, and all those videos raised huge red flags for me because they would mainly talk about the event instead of the actual movie. I don't blame the influencers for doing this because it didn't seem like a lot of them were actually critics. They were just fans, cosplayers, whatever. I also don't really blame the marketing people because they knew that they had to sell a garbage movie, but it still feels very soulless to me, like the studios are exploiting their die-hard fans to sell some tickets. This is a little bit of an aside, but I wanted to mention it. Now, let's talk about something that's more relevant to my channel, negative reviews. I don't like doing them, but sometimes it's necessary, right? This is maybe not the most eye-catching mentality to have with your bad reviews, but I think it's the healthiest one for me. Some people choose to ignore bad movies altogether. I think that's another symptom of the horror hype cycle. And listen, I don't have to hear about like every Blumhouse movie ever, but if we don't hold their feet to the fire a little bit, then why would they ever change, right? I think the inverse of this is also true though, where you have some people that really lean into the negativity with the same exaggerated language that I was talking about before, where every bad new horror movie is the worst movie of the year, and so on. I think both of these mentalities are equally exhausting. In general, though, I think us horror fans are really good at lifting up all the great things about this genre and its community, while kind of swiping the uglier sides under the rug. Like, have you ever thought about how many classic horror films are about the dangers of overconsumption, and yet horror has become commercialized to shit so we can buy cute Funko Pops or whatever? It's kind of fucked up when you think about it. I understand that this has happened to every subculture ever, though it's just a small example. I hope you get my point. You can have these discussions and criticisms even though you love the genre. I would actually argue that it's probably healthy for the genre and the community to have these discussions more openly. The AI controversy regarding Last Night with the Devil was a moment that made me scratch my head a little bit, because there were so many voices saying that this discussion was not worth having because Last Night with the Devil was an independent horror movie and we should always support those. I've also seen some of this dismissive rhetoric being used when discussing the troubling developments regarding Scream 7. I'm obviously not saying we all have to think the same regarding these issues, but to shut down the conversations completely feels very disingenuous to me. I am also excited that Neve Campbell is coming back, but that excitement doesn't immediately replace all my other emotions regarding the project and Spyglass Media. It's probably also worth noting that both of these news stories hit the mainstream, which of course didn't help the discourse be more civil. I understand that. I'm talking a lot about independent creators and social media because that is the space that I am in, but it's also worth noting that this horror hype cycle has been a thing for a very long time. I first started to notice this way before YouTube when I would go to review sites like Fangoria and Bloody Disgusting. I still visit these sites, I still like these sites, but I would hardly call what they do serious journalism or hard-hitting criticism. That's not a drag on anyone that works there, it's just a model of their business. Most enthusiast press is like that regardless of subject matter. I do prefer reading something like Fangoria over more mainstream outlets though, because horror often gets short-shrifted by mainstream critics. That has gotten a lot better over the years. It's certainly a lot better than it used to be, but I still feel like it's fairly noticeable in the industry overall. So it's not like everything I'm talking about here is a new phenomenon. I mentioned Skinamarink getting hyped up as the scariest movie ever made and leaving people disappointed, and that exact same thing happened with Paranormal Activity back in 2007, way before influencer culture ever was a thing. Paranormal Activity received a bunch of hype from the media and from people who saw it early on college campuses. Combine that with a very clever marketing campaign, and you got a bunch of people going to see that film only to realize that they don't really care about found footage. But I actually want to end this on a positive note, because as I said, these are things that I've noticed and I want to talk about and I want to be aware of, and I'm also trying to hold myself accountable here, right? But to end this on a positive note, I want to ask you a question. What are some creators in this space that you really like and trust? It doesn't have to be like traditional reviews, right? It can be any type of content. I just want us in the comments to highlight people we think are worth celebrating in the comments. Please take care of yourselves. I appreciate you. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys next time, okay? Bye.